The night was silent, except for the wind moving across the empty ruins. A human traveler named Daniel walked alone, his boots crunching on the broken ground. He was far from home. Wandering in a land where few humans dared to step, most said. This place was cursed, abandoned by its own people. But Daniel had learned long ago that behind every ruined place, there was a story waiting to be heard. He carried only a small bag and a lantern, its light flickering in the dark. The ruins stretched before him like the skeleton of a forgotten world. Shattered homes, crumbled walls, and twisted metal lay scattered like bones. He stopped for a moment, listening. The silence was heavy, almost suffocating. Then he heard it. At first, he thought it was only the wind, but the sound returned soft, faint, almost impossible to believe. A voice, a small voice, weak and broken. Whispering from beneath the earth, Daniel's heart froze. He dropped his bag and pressed his ear to the ground. Yes, it was real. The faintest cry, muffled by dirt and stone. Someone was alive under there, and they were begging to be heard. Help, please. Without another thought, Daniel threw his lantern aside and began to dig. His fingers clawed at the dirt, sharp rocks cutting his skin. The soil was heavy, packed tight, as if someone had buried whatever was beneath with cruel intention. Every handful felt like it took forever, but he did not stop. Sweat mixed with dust on his face, his breath quick and desperate. He ignored the pain in his hands. There was no time for pain. The voice grew a little louder, trembling. I can't breathe. Daniel's heart pounded. He dug faster, tearing through roots and broken wood. Finally, his fingers touched something softer than dirt. Cloth, torn and filthy. With one last push, he cleared the soil from a small face, big. Eyes stared back at him, wide with fear and shining with tears. It was a little alien girl, no older than 7 or 8 in human years. Her skin was pale with dust, her lips trembling. She gasped for air the moment her mouth was free, coughing hard. Daniel gently brushed the dirt away from her nose and cheeks. You're safe, he whispered. Breathe. You're safe now. Her body was shaking, too weak to move. He pulled more soil away until she was free enough for him to lift her. She was light as a feather, fragile as glass. Her arms clung weakly around his neck, though she was still afraid. Her tiny voice broke the silence again. Why? Why did you help me? Daniel's chest tightened. The question cut deeper than any wound. What kind of world made a child believe no one would help her? He pulled his coat from his bag and wrapped it around her. Her small head rested on his shoulder, her breaths shallow but steady. As he carried her away from the pile of dirt, Daniel looked back. The earth had been shaped carefully, not like an accident. This was no collapse. Someone had buried her on purpose and left her to die. The girl tried to speak, but her words broke into sobs. They didn't want me anymore. I'm nothing. I'm just a burden. Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't know who they were yet. But he knew cruelty when he saw it. He had seen broken soldiers, abandoned slaves, and people discarded like trash, but never a child left under the dirt to suffocate. Never. Something so heartless. You're not nothing, Daniel said firmly. His voice steady. You're alive, and that means you matter. The girl looked up at him with wide eyes, as if she didn't believe him. Tears rolled down her dusty cheeks. No one ever said that before. Daniel kept walking, his lantern left behind in the ruins. The night grew colder. The stars distant and silent, but he held her closer. Her fragile heartbeat faint against his chest. He didn't know where he was going, only that he could not leave her here. The ruins whispered with shadows, as if watching him. The wind carried echoes of voices, distant and cruel. Maybe those who buried her were still nearby. Maybe they would return. Daniel moved faster. His steps careful, but determined. He would not let the little voice in the dirt be silenced again. Whatever evil had tried to bury her was not finished, but neither was he. The girl, too weak to speak further, closed her eyes. For the first time, she allowed herself to rest. Because one human had hurt her when no one else did. And Daniel, with his bleeding hands and burning resolve, knew that this was only the beginning. Daniel walked quickly, his arms holding the fragile alien girl close to his chest. Her breathing was soft but uneven, like each breath might be her last. She was so light that it felt as if the dirt had already taken most of her strength. Her head rested against his shoulder, her tiny hands clinging to his coat as if she feared. Being dropped back into the ground, the ruins stretched out behind them, silent and empty. But Daniel could not shake the feeling that someone was watching. The way the girl had been buried too neat, too careful told him this was no accident. Someone had wanted her gone, and if they discovered she was alive, they might come back to finish it. Daniel found a cracked wall still standing, half covered. In vines, he slipped behind it, lowering the girl onto a patch of dry grass. She coughed hard, dirt still in her throat, and Daniel gently patted her back until the coughing eased. Her wide eyes, glowing faintly in the moonlight, studied him. With suspicion, she whispered, "Why? Why didn't you leave me there? Humans don't save us." Daniel crouched beside her, his face calm, though his hands were still bleeding from digging. "Because you were alive," he said simply, "and no one deserves to be left like that." The girl blinked at him, confused. Her stepmother's words echoed in her memory, harsh and cruel. "You are nothing but a burden, worthless and weak." No one had ever spoken to her the way Daniel just had. Her lips trembled, and she whispered again, "They said I was meant to die there." Daniel's jaw tightened. He hated cruelty. But cruelty toward a child was something he could never forgive. He leaned closer, his voice low but steady. "Listen to me. You were not meant to die. You survived, and now you are here with me. That means you are meant to live." Her eyes filled with tears, silent at first, then falling like rain down her dusty face. She wiped them quickly with her sleeve, ashamed. But Daniel placed his hand gently over hers. "Don't hide your tears. They prove you are still alive." Still fighting, for a long moment, the little alien girl only stared at him. Her small chest rose and fell as if she was trying to believe. His words, finally, she whispered, "What is your name, human?" "Daniel," he answered. "And yours?" Her voice was soft, almost fading. "Lyra." Daniel gave her a faint smile. "Lyra. That's a strong name." She shook her head quickly. "No, it's weak. They always said it was weak. That's why they buried me, because I was too weak." To be of use, the word struck Daniel like a knife. He remembered soldiers he once knew broken, scarred. Abandoned by commanders who thought them useless, he remembered slaves who had been thrown away when they could no longer serve. And now, here was a child, carrying the same weight. He clenched his fists, dirt and blood mixing in his palms. "No. Lyra, the weak ones are those who abandoned you. The strong one is the girl who cried from under the dirt and still lives." Lyra stared at him, lips parted as though she had never thought of it that way. For the first time, a spark lit her tired eyes, a spark of hope. Daniel reached into his bag and pulled out a small canteen of water. He lifted it carefully to her lips, letting her sip slowly. She drank, coughing a little, then sighed as if her whole body had been thirsty for days. He shared a piece of dry bread with her, breaking it into small pieces so her weak hands could hold them. Lyra chewed carefully, looking at him with something between fear and wonder. "No one ever gave me food like this before," she whispered. "I had to steal scraps. And when I was caught, they hurt me." Daniel's chest tightened. Again, What kind of family treated a child this way? What kind of world allowed it? You don't have to steal anymore, he said firmly. As long as I'm here, you'll eat. The words made Lyra's throat tighten, and she looked down quickly, trying to hide the tears returning to her eyes. But Daniel noticed, and he did not look away. Instead, he gave her the coat again. Tucking it around her small body, she leaned into it, shivering less now. For a brief moment, there was peace between them. The ruined land seemed quiet, the stars watching from above. But Daniel's instincts would not let him rest. He knew someone had buried Lyra. And people that cruel never left their work unchecked. They might return, and if they did, they would. Come with weapons. Daniel stood, scanning the shadows. Lyra looked up at him nervously, her voice trembling. They'll come back. They always do, my stepmother. She'll be angry when she finds out I'm alive. Daniel knelt down again, placing a hand on her shoulder. Let them come, he said, his eyes hard. If they want to hurt you again, they'll have to go through me first. Lyra's eyes widened. No one had ever stood for her. No one had ever said such words. She felt something strange inside her fear. Yes, but also safety. For the first time, she was not completely alone. Daniel lifted her again, stronger this time. The night stretched ahead of them, dark and uncertain. But he knew one thing for sure. He could not, and would not, leave her. Her voice. That tiny voice under the dirt had already changed him, and no force in the universe would make him ignore it. As he carried her through the shadows, Lyra whispered into his ear, "Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for hearing me." And Daniel, his steps steady and unbroken, whispered back, "I'll always hear you, Lyra." The night grew colder as Daniel carried Lyra deeper into the ruins. The stars shone above, pale and distant, but they gave no warmth. Lyra was wrapped in his coat, her small body trembling even though he held her close. Every few steps, Daniel could feel her tiny hands grip tighter. As if she feared he might suddenly let go, they stopped near the remains of an old structure. Half broken, but still standing strong enough to give shelter. Daniel lowered her gently onto a stone ledge, lighting a small fire with dried roots and broken wood. The flames flickered, casting long shadows on the wall. Lyra's glowing eyes followed the movement of the fire. Wide and fearful for her, fire had always meant punishment. Not warmth. Daniel noticed her unease. "It's safe," he said softly, breaking the silence. "This fire won't hurt you. It will keep you warm." Lyra hugged the coat tighter and nodded, though her fear didn't fade right away. She had lived too long with cruelty to believe kindness could be real. Still, she edged closer to the warmth, slowly letting the tension ease from her thin shoulders. Daniel pulled out a small strip of dried meat from his bag and handed it to her. She took it carefully, as if expecting him to snatch it back. When he didn't, she chewed slowly, her eyes never leaving his face. Finally, her small voice broke the silence. "Why are you doing this? Why are you helping me?" my people said. "Humans are monsters." Daniel gave a soft laugh, though his eyes stayed serious. "Monsters don't dig children out of the dirt," he replied, "and they don't share food or fire." Lyra stared at him, confused. "All my life, I was told that humans would eat us if they found us." Daniel shook his head. "Then they lied to you. Little one, you've seen the truth now. Humans may not be perfect, but we don't eat children." Lyra lowered her gaze, the words fighting against years of fear and lies. For the first time, a shadow of doubt crossed her belief that humans were terrible. And that doubt gave her a fragile spark of hope. But before she could reply, a new sound cut through the quiet. Night, distant voices echoing in the ruins. Daniel froze, his sharp instincts recognizing the danger. Lyra's face went pale, her body stiffening as she whispered, "They're here." Daniel crouched beside her, his hand lightly pressing her shoulder. "Who?" My stepmother's hunters, she whispered, her voice shaking. They always come back. They'll finish it this time, if they find me. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had expected this. Cruel people never left unfinished cruelty. He reached for his pack, pulling out a short blade, the only weapon he carried. It was not much, but in his hands, it would be enough. The voices grew louder, closer. Torches flickered in the distance, their light bouncing off broken walls. Daniel could see the shadows moving 3, maybe 4 figures, searching. They were calling Lyra's name. Their tones mocking little burden, little ghost. Come out, no more hiding. Lyra's small hands covered her ears, her body shaking. Tears welled in her eyes as the voices stabbed into her heart. Daniel leaned close, whispering firmly. Lyra, look at me. She lifted her head slowly, her eyes full of terror. They'll kill me, Daniel. They always said they would. Daniel's voice was calm but unbreakable. Not while I'm here. I won't let them touch you. The certainty in his tone stopped her tears for a moment. No one had ever spoken to her with such strength before. She wanted to believe him, even if her fear screamed otherwise. The hunters' footsteps crunched closer, their torches sweeping over the ruins. Daniel quickly stamped out the fire. Plunging them into darkness, he lifted Lyra again, holding her close as he pressed his back against the stone wall. He moved slowly, silently, his eyes fixed on the shadows ahead. They crept through the ruins. Every broken stone and twisted root a danger if stepped on. Lyra buried her face against his shoulder, too afraid to watch. Daniel's breath was steady, his muscles tense. The hunters passed close, so close that Daniel could hear them laughing. One of them said, if the dirt didn't finish her, we'll do it ourselves. She's not worth the air she breathes. Lyra trembled violently at the words. Daniel tightened his grip, whispering just for her. You are worth every breath. Don't forget that. They slipped through the shadows. Daniel's steps careful but quick. Every time the torchlight swung near, he ducked behind broken walls or shattered beams. The hunters cursed, spreading out, their voices echoing like predators for long minutes. It was a deadly game of hide and seek. Finally, when the torches grew faint behind them, Daniel moved faster. He carried Lyra through a narrow path between 2 crumbled towers. Only when the voices faded into the night did he stop. His chest rose and fell with deep breaths, but his grip on her never loosened. Lyra slowly lifted her head, her wide eyes meeting his. You kept me safe, she whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. You really kept me safe. Daniel gave her a faint smile. And I'll keep doing it until you don't have to be afraid anymore. Lyra's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were different, not just of fear, but of something she had never felt before, trust. She leaned against him, whispering so softly it was almost lost in the wind. Then I'll believe you, Daniel. Even if I'm scared, I'll believe you. Daniel looked out into the darkness, his blade still in hand. The night was far from over, and danger still lurked in the ruins. But for the first time, Lyra's whispers carried not only fear, but hope, and Daniel silently promised himself no matter what came, that hope would not be broken again. The night was alive with danger. The voices of the hunters echoed through the ruins. Growing sharper, closer, Daniel could feel the weight of their search pressing against the dark walls around him. He held Lyra close, her fragile body trembling. With every sound, her fear was like a heartbeat against his chest. Quick and desperate, the hunters were not giving up. Their torches swung like angry eyes across the ruins, searching every shadow. They can't be far. One growled, his voice carrying through the night. Find the girl. Her stepmother wants her gone before sunrise. Lyra gasped, burying her face against Daniel's shoulder. Her whisper was barely audible. They won't stop. Daniel. She never stops. Daniel tightened his hold on her. Then neither will I, he said, his voice steady. We'll keep moving, and I'll get you out of here. He darted through the ruins, choosing paths hidden by broken walls and fallen beams. Every step had to be careful. One wrong sound could give them away. Lyra clung to him, too weak to walk on her own. Her trust was fragile, but growing with every heartbeat she spent in his arms. Behind them, the hunters spread out, one torchlight. Passed so close that Daniel could see the cruel smirk on the man's face. They say she's useless, the hunter muttered. Better to bury trash than waste food on it. Daniel's blood boiled at the words. He moved faster. Slipping behind a half-collapsed tower, the path ahead narrowed into a dark forest. The trees twisted and thick, the shadows stretched long, and the sounds of the hunters grew muffled. Behind them, but the danger was not over. The ground here was uneven, full of roots and sharp rocks. Daniel stumbled once, catching himself before falling. Lyra's small voice rose in panic. Don't let me fall, Daniel. Please. He steadied her quickly, his tone gentle but firm. I've got you, Lyra. I won't let you fall. Her grip loosened just slightly, her trust deepening. For a child who had known only betrayal, even those words were a shield against her fear. As they entered the forest, the hunters followed. Their torches flickered between the trees like hungry flames. Lyra's glowing eyes widened. They're still coming. Daniel scanned the dark path ahead. A river shimmered faintly in the moonlight, its water rushing fast. It was dangerous, but it was their only chance to escape. He took a deep breath, adjusting his hold on Lyra. Hold on tight, he whispered. We're going through. The cold water bit into his legs the moment he stepped in. It was deeper than he expected, the current strong, but Daniel kept moving, each step steady. His blade gripped in one hand. Lyra held high in the other. She gasped at the icy water splashing against her feet, her arms tightening around his neck. Her voice shook. We'll drown. We'll drown. Daniel shook his head. No, Lyra, trust me. We'll make it. The current tugged hard, threatening to pull him under. His boots slipped on smooth rocks, but he kept his balance. Every step was a battle, but he never let her go. Behind them, the hunters' shouts grew louder, angry, there in the water. After them, torches lit the riverbank, shadows dancing on the waves. Arrows whistled past, splashing into the water. Daniel pushed forward, his body straining against the current. The far bank was close now, the trees dense enough to hide them. Lyra whimpered, her eyes shut tight. Her voice trembled like the river itself. They'll catch us. They always catch me. Daniel's teeth clenched, his voice like iron. Not this time. With one last push, he reached the far side. Pulling himself and Lyra onto the muddy bank, he collapsed to his knees. Catching his breath, Lyra coughed, shivering violently. But she was safe in his arms. The hunters' torches flickered on the other side of the river, their voices furious, coward, human. You won't keep her forever. Daniel stood slowly, his silhouette tall against the moonlight. He looked back at them, his voice calm but sharp as steel. She's not yours to bury anymore. The hunters cursed, but the river held them back. Their torches glowed dimly as Daniel turned and carried Lyra into the deeper forest. The night grew quieter, the sound of the river fading behind them. Lyra's eyes opened weakly, looking up at him. You carried me. Even when the water tried to take us, Daniel nodded, brushing wet hair from her face. And I'll keep carrying you until you can stand on your own, Lyra. For a long moment, she was silent. Then, with a voice small but full of something new, she whispered, Then maybe I'm not useless. Daniel's chest tightened. He looked down at her, his expression soft. You are far from useless, Lyra. You are stronger than you know. Her eyes shimmered in the moonlight. tears mixing with the water on her face. No one had ever told her that before. No one had ever seen her as anything but a burden. But this human, this stranger, carried her as if she was precious, and for the first time, Lyra began to believe it. The forest swallowed them, dark and silent, but between the shadows and the fear, something else was born. Hope, fragile but alive. And as Daniel walked deeper into the night, holding her close, he knew that hope was worth protecting, no matter the cost. The forest was quiet, only the sound of night insects and the distant rush of the river behind them. Daniel found a small clearing surrounded by thick trees, safe enough to rest for a while. He lowered Lyra gently to the ground, her body still. Shivering from the cold water, her lips were pale, her eyes heavy. But she clung to his hand, as if letting go would mean being buried again. Daniel gathered dry branches and leaves, striking his flint until sparks caught. A small fire grew. Casting a circle of light against the dark forest, Lyra watched the flames carefully, her eyes wide. Every flicker seemed to remind her of fear. But slowly, the warmth began to sink into her cold skin. She curled closer, wrapped in Daniel's coat. Her tiny hands reaching toward the heat. Daniel pulled food from his bag-dried fruit. A strip of bread and a small flask of water. He offered them to her with steady hands. Lyra hesitated, staring at the bread as if it were something forbidden. Finally, she whispered, "No one ever shared food with me before. Not like this." Daniel tilted his head, puzzled. "Not even your family?" Lyra shook her head slowly, her eyes dim. "They gave me scraps when they remembered. Sometimes. Nothing at all. I had to steal. And when they caught me?" Her voice broke, and she pulled the coat tighter, hiding her trembling. Daniel's chest tightened. He pushed the bread closer to her, his voice firm but kind. "You don't need to steal from me, Lyra. This is yours." Her hands shook as she took the bread, nibbling it slowly. The taste was plain, but to her, it felt like a treasure. Tears slid down her cheeks as she chewed. Daniel said nothing, only letting her eat in silence. After a while, Lyra whispered, "Why? Do you care? I was told humans hate us, that you would laugh at me. Or hurt me." Daniel leaned back against a tree, watching the fire crackle. "Do I look like I hate you?" She looked at him, then shook her head. "No. But you're different. You must be." Daniel smiled faintly, though his eyes stayed serious. "Maybe. But I think kindness shouldn't be rare. It should be normal. It doesn't matter if you're human or alien. Every life has value." Lyra blinked at him, confused. "No one ever told me I had value. They said I was weak. That's why my stepmother buried me. She said the dirt would do what I couldn't. Disappear." Her words were sharp, heavy. Daniel's hands curled into fists. He wanted to march back across the river and face the woman who had dared to say such things. But instead, he looked at Lyra, his voice steady. "They were wrong, Lyra. You're not weak. You're still here. That makes you stronger than they ever were." Lyra stared at him, her glowing eyes reflecting the fire. She didn't answer right away, but her small shoulders relaxed a little. For the first time in her life, she wanted to believe someone. And Daniel's words felt like more than just comfort. They felt like truth. The night deepened, the forest wrapped around them like a heavy blanket. Lyra leaned closer to the fire, her face soft in the glow. Her voice was quiet, almost shy. "Daniel, can I ask something?" "Course," he said, looking down at her. She hesitated, then whispered, "Why didn't you leave me? You could have walked past and no one would know. Why risk so much for me?" Daniel thought for a moment, his eyes on the flames. Finally, he answered, "Because when I heard your voice, I knew it wasn't right for the world to stay silent. I've seen too many people ignored, too many left behind. I couldn't let it happen again, not to you." Lyra's throat tightened, her heart beating fast. Oh, no one had ever said such things to her. She wiped her tears quickly, whispering, "Then maybe humans aren't monsters. Maybe you're the only one who heard me." Daniel reached out, brushing dirt gently from her hair. "I'll always hear you, Lyra." The fire crackled softly, warming the air between them. Lyra's fear seemed to loosen its grip. Replaced by a fragile sense of safety, she shifted closer. Leaning against Daniel's side, her voice was small but steady. "Then, can I stay with you? Just until I'm not afraid anymore." Daniel looked down at her, her tired eyes searching his face. He nodded slowly. "You can stay as long as you need. I won't abandon you." Her lips curled into the faintest smile, her first real smile in years. She closed her eyes, letting her small body finally rest against him. Daniel kept watch, his blade resting on his lap, his eyes scanning the shadows. The hunters were still out there, and her stepmother's hatred would not end so easily. But for now, in this small circle of firelight, Lyra was safe. The night stretched on, and as the stars glimmered above, two worlds, one human, one aliens, sat together, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as something new. Trust between worlds, fragile but real. The fire had burned down to soft embers, glowing faintly in the dark. Daniel sat with his back against a tree, his blade resting across his knees. Lyra slept against his side, her breathing calm at last. But Daniel did not sleep. His instincts told him the night was not finished, and he was right. A branch snapped in the distance. Then another. The sound was too heavy for an animal, too controlled. Daniel's hand tightened on his blade, his eyes scanning the shadows. Faint torchlight glimmered between the trees. Moving closer, the hunters had returned. Lyra stirred, her eyes opening slowly. She saw the light and gasped, clinging to Daniel's coat. "It's her," she whispered in terror. "She's coming." Daniel bent close, his voice calm. "Stay behind me, Lyra. No one will take you." The torches grew brighter until figures stepped into the clearing. For hunters, their weapons sharp and cruel. And behind them, a tall alien woman with a face of cold beauty and sharp cruelty. Her eyes glowed like poison, her voice dripping with venom. "So, the human ruined my work." Lyra froze, her body trembling as the woman stepped forward. "Stepmother," she whispered, her voice breaking. The woman smirked, tilting her head. "You should have stayed buried. Little burden, the dirt was kinder than I ever was." Daniel stood, placing himself between Lyra and the stepmother. His blade glinted in the firelight, his voice steady. "You buried a child alive. That makes you the weak one." "Not her," the woman laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Humans and their foolish hearts, always trying to save what should be thrown away." She flicked her hand at her hunters. "Take her. Kill the human if he resists." The hunters advanced, weapons raised. Lyra whimpered, clutching Daniel's coat, but Daniel stepped forward, his stance unshakable. "You'll have to go through me first," he said, his voice like stone. The first hunter lunged. Swinging a jagged blade, Daniel moved fast, blocking the strike and shoving the man back. The second came from the side, but Daniel twisted, his knife slashing across the hunter's arm. The man cried out, stumbling. Lyra gasped, her eyes wide as she watched Daniel fight. The stepmother's smirk faded into irritation. "Pathetic human," she hissed. "You can't fight all of us." But Daniel's eyes never wavered. "I don't need to fight all of you. I only need to protect her." The third hunter charged. Swinging low, Daniel ducked, kicking the man's leg out from under him. The fourth hesitated, unsure, but the stepmother's glare forced him forward. Daniel's blade met his, sparks flashing in the night. The fight was brutal, close. Every move fueled not by anger, but by determination. Behind him, Lyra clutched her coat tighter, whispering to herself, "He's fighting for me. No one ever fought for me." The hunters regrouped, circling Daniel. He breathed hard, his muscles burning, but his stance never broke. The stepmother sneered, her voice sharp as glass. Why risk your life for a worthless thing? She's nothing. She's dirt. She's mine to throw away. Daniel's eyes flashed with fury. She's not dirt. She's not worthless. She's a child, your child, and you buried her. That makes you less than human. Less than anything. The stepmother's face twisted in rage. She pulled a whip from her belt, its edges lined with metal shards. With a snap, it cracked through the air, slicing across Daniel's arm. Blood spilled, but he did not fall. He held his blade firm, his voice unshaken. You won't touch her again. The hunters hesitated, fear flickering in their eyes. They had never seen someone stand against their mistress with such defiance. Lyra's tears fell, but her heart beat with something new pride. She stepped forward, her small voice shaking but loud enough to cut the silence. You're wrong, stepmother, she cried. I'm not worthless, I'm not nothing, he heard. Me when no one else did, and he saved me. The stepmother's eyes narrowed, her fury sharp. You dare speak to me, little ghost. Daniel stepped in front of Lyra again, his body shielding her completely. His voice rang out. She dares because she's alive, and as long as I breathe, she will stay alive. The stepmother snapped her whip again, her face twisted with hate. But Daniel surged forward, deflecting the strike with his blade and driving her back. His strength was not from power, but from purpose. Every move said the same thing. She will not fall again. The hunters wavered, one stepping back, then another. Fear spread through them like fire. The stepmother snarled, but even she felt it. The human's resolve was stronger than her cruelty. Finally, she spat at the ground, her voice sharp. This isn't over. Human, she belongs to me. And I will return with a wave of her hand. She pulled her hunters back into the shadows, their torches fading into the forest. The clearing grew quiet again, only the crackle of the dying fire remaining. Daniel lowered his blade, his arm bleeding, his breath heavy. Lyra rushed to his side, her small hands trembling. You stood against her, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. You didn't let her take me. Daniel knelt, meeting her glowing eyes. I told you, Lyra, you're not worthless. You're not alone. You're mine to protect now. Her. Tears fell freely, but her smile broke through. For the first time, she felt what family was meant to be. And as she clung to Daniel, whispering his name, he knew the battle was not over. But he also knew one thing with absolute certainty. Her stepmother might return, but Lyra would never be left alone again. The forest was still, the fire reduced to faint red coals glowing in the dirt. Daniel sat against the tree, his arm wrapped in a strip of cloth to stop the bleeding. His body ached, but he stayed awake, his eyes sharp in the darkness. Beside him, Lyra sat curled in his coat, her glowing eyes watching him with quiet wonder. She had seen him fight. She had seen him stand against her stepmother without fear. And for the first time in her life, someone had chosen her over danger. Someone had risked everything for her. The night stretched slowly toward morning when the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Lyra whispered, Daniel, are you tired? He glanced at her, giving a faint smile. More tired than I've been in years. He admitted, but I can't rest yet. Not while they're still out there. Lyra lowered her gaze, guilt flickering in her eyes. They'll come back for me. They always do. Maybe you should leave me. You don't deserve this pain. Daniel leaned forward, his voice calm but strong. Lyra, listen to me. I didn't save you just to leave you again. You're not a burden to me. You never were. Her small hands gripped the coat tighter, tears welling in her eyes. No one has ever said that to me, she whispered. They all said I was useless, too small, too weak. But you You call me strong." Daniel reached out, brushing dirt gently from her hair. "That's because you are strong, Lyra, stronger than anyone gave you credit for. You cried out from under the dirt and survived. That takes more courage than most people ever find." Lyra blinked up at him, her tears shining in the new light of dawn. Slowly, a small smile broke through her fear for the first time. She let herself believe she was more than what her stepmother called her. The forest around them brightened, the golden rays of morning spilling through the branches. Birds began to sing, their voices soft and hopeful. Daniel stood, his blade still at his side, and offered his hand to Lyra. "Come on, little one. Let's keep moving. There's a village not far from here, a place where you'll be safe." Lyra hesitated, looking at his hand. Her voice trembled. "Will you stay with me, or will you leave me there?" Daniel crouched, so his eyes met hers directly. "I will stay as long as you need." "Lyra, you're not alone anymore." Her small hand slipped into his, and she nodded. Together, they walked through the forest, their steps slow but steady. As the trees thinned, the ruins gave way to open fields touched by sunlight. Lyra looked around in wonder, her face softening at the sight of flowers blooming in the grass. For years, she had only seen darkness, walls, and shadows. Now, the world felt bigger than she ever imagined. She tugged on Daniel's hand, her voice shy. "Daniel, if I stay with you, what will I be to you?" Daniel paused, looking at her small, hopeful face. He crouched again, resting a hand gently on her shoulder. "You'll be family," he said, his voice steady and warm. "Not a burden, not a ghost, not worthless. You'll be my family." Lyra's breath caught, her eyes filling with tears. "Family." She repeated softly, as if tasting the word for the first time. Her lips trembled, then curved into a smile brighter than the morning sun. "Can I call you something? Like father?" Daniel's throat tightened, emotion filling his chest. He nodded slowly. "You can call me whatever you want, Lyra, father, protector, friend. I'll answer to all of it." Lyra threw her thin arms around him, clinging to him with all the strength her small body had. Tears streamed down her cheeks. But they were not tears of fear this time. They were tears of joy. "You heard me when no one else did," she whispered into his shoulder. "You saved me. And now you're my family." Daniel held her close, his eyes on the rising sun. The shadows of the night had passed, and though danger might return, they had won this battle. He had saved more than just a life. He had saved a soul. And in doing so, he had found something too, a reason to keep going, a bond stronger than blood as they walked toward the light of a new day. Lyra's small hand never left his. Her stepmother's hatred no longer had power over her heart. She was no longer the girl buried under dirt, forgotten and unwanted. She was Lyra, alive, strong, and loved. And Daniel, the lone human traveler, carried her forward. Not as a burden, but as his daughter. A new dawn had begun for both of them.